Welcome to my guide on how to do raids at 0kc. This is not intended to be in-depth, it's only supposed to be for those who want to start raiding but are intimidated to start. The first thing you should know is how to get to Mount Quidamortem, the location of Raids 1. If you need to know, here is the path you can use to get here from ferry code DJR to the mountain guide, and also the regular path if you have not talked to the mountain guide at the top of the mountain. The second thing you should know is what stats you should have for raiding. I recommend getting 78 Herblore in case your team does not have 78. Most people do have it, and if you have the money, then I suggest getting 90 Herblore, but only if you have extra money. If you don't have 90, don't worry about it, just upgrade your gear, or you can use it to train some of your combat stats. If you don't have 85 plus in magic and range, as well as at least enough combat stats to get you over 115 combat, then I would recommend that you focus on that first before you start raiding. The reason is, if your average combat level of the people in the raid is not 115, it will scale the points down. Even if your combat level 104, if you have somebody who's level 126, then it will give you the same points as if you were both 115 combat. 115 is the max combat for the point scaling. The next thing you should know before your gear setup is there is a very useful channel on Discord called We Do Raids. It's probably the most important thing for this guide. I would heavily recommend joining it because it has everything that you could need to start raiding. It has mentors that can teach you. It has learner workshops where all of the mentors go into it and bring in a whole ton of learners. I've done one before, I can put it up on the screen as well. It has gear resources, it has recommendations, it has ban lists so you can check it to see which users you can put on your ignore list so that you don't get scammed, or at least you have a less likelihood of being scammed. And most importantly, it has a function to look for people around your raids KC so that you can get into raids faster and pretty much be non-stop going into raids and coming out. If nobody is posting their raids, you can scout, which is, I have no gear right now on this account, but it is running in, going into your clan chat, typing it. You do this, go to this raiding parties billboard, make party, run to the exclamation point, enter the Chambers of Xeric door, and then you look at your layout. Now you want to repeat this until you get 2 puzzles and 3 combat. The rooms you're looking for, as well as what you need, is Muttadiles, you need a Toxic Blowpipe and Rune Darts. Guardians, you need a Dragon Pickaxe. Lizardman Shamans, you need a Crossbow, as well as a Sanfuserum or Antidote. And Skeletal Mystics, where you need a Salvia Amulet EI, a Crossbow, and a Blowpipe, depending on your range. All of this is going to be discussed in gear setups, since you're going to bring in everything that you need for these 4 bosses anyway. If you find a room without Guardians, don't bring a pickaxe. If you find a room without Mystics, then don't bring a Salvia Amulet. And because I forgot to say this earlier, don't leave your raid because you've scouted one. Wait for somebody else to walk in, then you can leave it and bank whatever you have to. If you leave, the raid will dissolve, and then you'll have to rescout it. Next thing is puzzle rooms. A lot of people will tell you not to do thieving, and you shouldn't if you're in a group of like 3 people or 4 people. If you're not solo, don't do thieving, except for when you're learning. Reason being, you don't take any damage in this room, except for poison chests, which only do about 2 damage per, and it's just an easier way to conserve brews throughout the raid when you're trying to get down all of the other monsters that are inside it. I'll go over every single combat and puzzle room after I do gear setups. Basically, puzzle rooms are going to be the easiest no matter what you have. The best type that you can have is crabs and tightrope. Those are the fastest raids, but more often than not, you're going to get ice demon and thieving somewhere in the mix. So when you're beginning, just deal with what you've got. I would say to do every single one while you're learning. Maybe don't do ice demon thieving raids, but if you get tightrope thieving, I would still suggest that you shouldn't throw it away because you still have to get down all of the other rooms and raids before you start doing efficient crabs and tightrope raids. Now onto gear setups as well as room breakdowns, and then Olm afterwards. Before moving on to gear, make sure that you train up your stats equivalent to what your bank is worth. This image pretty much says everything that you need to know about money versus stats. Now assuming you're somebody who has good enough stats and an average bank, this is the minimum requirement gear that you should take into raids. I've taken all of these gear setup inventories straight from the We Do Raids Discord. So if you wanted to compare your bank with their recommended setups for bank value, they have 100 mil, 200 mil, 300 mil, 500, 700, 1 bill, and then rapier and scythe setups. So if you have any questions about it, you can just go to that section of the Discord and you'll be able to relate whatever your bank value is worth with their recommended setup. The only exception is I'd say to keep Void when you're learning until you feel comfortable enough at Olm to switch into more switches. Just because when I started and I was using Void, I felt like it was way easier to use Void compared to the switches when I was still trying to not die on Olm. And then I did a couple Olms after I knew that I wouldn't die at it, and I was dying with the gear that wasn't Void. So even if you feel like you're very comfortable at it, it's still good to use Void for a little bit afterwards, just because the mechanics can be hard to learn while you're trying to do switches. Once you've gotten good enough to not die at Olm with Void, it's recommended to switch to better DPS gear that is not Void. This is the order that you should upgrade your gear, assuming that you have a fighter torso, Helm of Nietaznat, dragon boots, all of that kind of stuff, then you can upgrade it in this order. That's pretty much all the detail you should know about gear setups, and since it's very variable depending on the person's bank, I'll let you look at that section on their Discord so that you can figure out the best gear for you. I want to move on now to the puzzle rooms and combat rooms, a little bit of an in-depth description of each one, just so that you're able to go in there and feel comfortable before you go into the actual room. For Lizardman Shamans, all you want to do is a hit and run strategy with your crossbow. You could use your blowpipe, but I would recommend it while you're learning to only use it to heal if needed. This is the room you're going to need a Sandfuse Serum for because their poison can hit high amounts. Make sure that if you're poisoned, immediately drink your Sandfuse Serum. And then all you have to do is split away from your team and make sure that nobody gets hit by the poison globs. The poison globs do heavy damage to you if you get hit, so just run around the room making sure that you don't run into a teammate. Also, try to only pull one shaman, but if you pull two, it doesn't really matter. You're just going to have to run around even more. Once you've killed the first one, focus on the second one, and then finish the room. For Mystics, immediately equip your Salve Amulet as soon as you walk into the room. You want to pull the one that's the closest to the entrance of the room, so that you don't take any damage from a second one. For 100% of the time you're in this room, protect from Mage, and try to have Rigor active if you have it. If not, use Eagle Eye. After that, just focus on killing one at a time, and then blowpipe the last Mystic when you're able to. With 3 people, there will be 4 Mystics. With 1 person, there will be 3. Since this is a guide more geared towards trios, make sure that you know that there will be 4 so you don't accidentally pull one by running at one of them. Guardians are the easiest boss out of all 4 combat rooms when you're first learning raids. All you have to do is drink a super combat, put on Piety, and then attack him and run 3 tiles back. You want to start attacking him from the 3rd tile back, just so you know you won't be hit by any of his attacks. This completely avoids the damage from his boulder attack that he does, as well as makes it so you don't get hit that often by his slash attack. Just make sure you try to time it with your team to where you're running 3 tiles back with them at the same time. If you have trouble, you can always take one of the Guardians by yourself while you're learning. Muttadile isn't going to be the hardest one for you, but it's going to be the one that uses the most bruise. What you need to do is put on Protect from Range and Rigor, Eagle Eye if you don't have it, and then take out your blowpipe and attack the small Muttadile. Muttadile will go to the tree once every time he goes under 50% HP. It's around 40%, not really 50%, so just watch his health bar. After he goes to the tree the first time, he's going to heal up, so just keep attacking him until he's dead. It's going to use a couple of brews because periodically you will get maged by the big Muttadile while he's sitting down in the pool. Just keep attacking the small one, staying out of melee range, and then once you kill him, run over to the safe spot for the big Muttadile, which is on screen right now. You're going to want to stay here until he goes to the tree for the first time, and it's your choice to stay here or to run to a different location. It's if you trust the safe spot, which I do and don't, because Muttadile will run back up to you, and usually will get stuck, but sometimes will try to trail off to the other side and can attack you and deal massive melee damage. Just make sure you stay out of the big Muttadile's melee range, because it hits 70 plus with its melee attacks, and you don't want to get caught in by it. Stay out of range, keep attacking until it's gone to the tree 3 times, and then kill it. You can bring Ice Barrage to get little Mutta and big Mutta stuck, but it doesn't usually land on big Mutta, and you're better off just tanking the bruise. After you're done with it, pick up the Overload and Prayer Enhance that it drops. For 3 people, you can choose to split the Overload Plus and the Prayer Enhances in order to go in, but if it's your first KC, I'd recommend making a 3rd Overload, even if it's not Plus. Once you're finished and you've grabbed those, move on. For Tightrope, drink a range potion dose as soon as you walk into the room. You want to get your blowpipe out and start attacking the mages with Mage Protect on. Once again, if you have Rigor, put it on. If not, put on Eagle Eye. You and your team want to attack all of the mages one by one until all of the mage side is dead. Then, you move on to the range side, but there's a special mechanic that you want to do once you kill all of the magers. After killing them, have only one person attack the ranger, and then have them run behind the shadow root that's next to it. If there's no shadow root, there is another room layout where you can hide behind one of the sides of the door that has the shimmering barrier. You want them to wait there for 5 blowpipe hits and then run back out and attack it again and then hide behind the shadow root. This makes it so you take the least amount of damage from the rangers for your entire team. If it gets messed up and it attacks somebody else, have them run behind the shadow root instead. Always have range protect up just in case the aggro gets switched onto a different person. Then, once you're done, cross over the tightrope, grab the keystone crystal, and use it on the barrier. Depending on the person who grabs it, it will give you 700 points. People usually decide who to give it to, but in this case I just ran right over and grabbed it. Nobody really cares that much since it's only 700 points. For thieving and the other puzzle rooms, it's most common to not have a chest if you get it early on in the raid. If you have no opportunity to get scavs because it's the first thing in the raid, then what you have to do is drop all your potions next to the chest. Send one person back to kill the scavengers. If there are no scavengers because it's the first room, just have all 3 people drop their potions and start picking the chests. You're going to want to get around 35 grubs total. Drop them next to the trough as you pick them, and then pick enough to where you think you have around 35 total. A good way to see if you have enough grubs is to deposit all of them into the trough and then grab one more from a chest and put it in. If you get points, you might still need more. If you don't get points, then you're pretty much set. Thieving is a really good room to do while you're first learning, because you don't take any damage from it, and if you brought a little amount of brews because you have a lot of switches, then you don't have to worry about the rest of the raid that much. I would say to do it only around your first 5 KC. For Ice Demon, the best way to do it is to have a chest down and then deposit all of your gear into it. If you don't have a chest, you can drop kindling in front of the braziers, but it's just a lot more tedious to do that. If you do have a chest, deposit all of your kindling in there until each person can take out a full inventory of kindling to put in the brazier. Once each person is chopped enough, get ready all next to the braziers and then light them at the same time. If you're like a second off between each person, it doesn't matter. It still knocks the Ice Demon's defenses down and makes him come out. So don't worry if you were a second off, you should still be fine as long as you had 27 kindling in your inventory and a tinderbox. After he comes out of his little stuck zone, then he starts attacking the players. The best thing you can do is protect from range as soon as he starts walking, because then he won't attack a player with an ice blitz as soon as he comes out. And then try to hit him with your Dragon Warhammer or Bandos Godsword. If you hit, it's going to make it a lot easier because he has high defense, and then just take out your blowpipe and do the same hit and run strategy as you would do at Shamans, except in a line. Try to go vertical and make sure that every time he looks at you, you run to another spot 2 tiles away. This is so you can avoid the damage from his rolling boulder attacks that he throws out of his mouth. It's going to take a while to kill him unless you hit a lot of Dragon Warhammer specs, so just keep in mind that it's probably going to take a while and make sure that you have your potions out. The easiest way to do this is to hit Withdraw All when you take your gear out. Once you've killed him, you're set to move on to the next room. The Crabs room is the fastest room in raids depending on your team. All you have to do is bounce the orb off the crabs and use the correct combat style to turn the crystals white. The blue crystal requires melee, the yellow crystal requires mage, the purple crystal requires range, and the black crystal requires nothing. You just have to leave the orb white. Remembering that is half the puzzle because the room layout can vary. You're better off remembering which colors correlate to each crystal than focusing on anything else. As to where to put the crabs, have one player take the crab and put it directly under the spot where the orb comes out to the farthest tile that they can. Depending on the layout and which direction the orb bounces, move the crabs around to line up with each crystal. To make it simpler, usually 1 or 2 players stand still and another player is moving to each lineup leading a crab. It's hard to explain, but once you get in the room, as long as you remember the colors, doing the actual puzzle is not as hard as it looks. Focus on 1 crystal at a time, and if you have a Dragon Warhammer, you can smash the crabs, but with 3 people you shouldn't have to worry about that. Scavs and prep is the next part. This part can be done at 2 different times. You can either do this right before a puzzle room, or right before Olm. The only puzzle rooms you shouldn't do it for is Tightrope and the actual Ice Demon fight. You can look for where scavs are going to be by looking at Runelight's Chambers of Xeric Scouter plugin. The letters for scav is S, puzzle rooms are P, combat rooms are C, and resource rooms are F. Resource rooms are the ones where you can farm and make potions in. After figuring out where those are all going to be and you're ready to go and fight Olm, these are the supplies that you're going to need. Make sure you get all of them. This is going to be over prepping, but you should expect to die on your first few raids, KC. When you're scavenging, get 2 planks for a chest, 50 juice, 18 mushrooms, 6 Sicily. If you're all learners and close to 0 KC, you should probably get 60 juice or more, because multiple people might die at Olm. When you start getting better, you won't need as much and prep will take a lot less time. Pick up around 8 to 12 Buchu seeds depending on your team's farming levels. You're also going to need 3 Gobbler seeds and 2 Noxifer seeds. If nobody picked up seeds during the raid, then it's possible to rake seeds in the next room where the energy well is, after the last resource room. Press deposit all in the chest and have a person start farming by grabbing the seeds and all the tools from the tool supply in the last resource room. While the seeds grow, have all 3 players take a full inventory of gourd vials from the little gourd vial tree, press take lots and fill them with water at the geyser. Deposit all of the water-filled gourds in the shared chest and have your 2 people with the highest farming level start picking the herbs. The seeds can be planted in any order. I usually like to just have at least 1 Buchu planted at all times. The number of herbs you want to pick is 65 or more Buchu depending on how many brews you want to make, 9 Gobbler, and 3 Noxifer. This is going to make 47 brews, 15 restores, 3 prayer enhances, and 3 overloads. If you had Muttadile earlier, only make 1 overload and 1 prayer enhance. This is because you're going to have 2 overload plus potions already. When making these potions, make sure that you have 78 herb lore. You can make them at less herb lore, but it will not be the plus type potion, and it's not worth making them if they aren't plus. For all of them, you're going to need a gourd filled vial, but I've put the ingredients on screen. For the Xeric's aids, which are like Ceridome and Brews, you're going to need 1 Buchu and 1 juice. For the revitalization potions, which are like super restores, you're going to need 1 Buchu and 1 mushroom. For the prayer enhances, you're going to need 1 Buchu and 1 Sicily. And for the overloads, you're going to need 1 of each of these type of potions. You're going to need a Kodai potion, an Elder potion, and a Twisted potion, plus a Noxifer. Now I've also put up how to make those potions on the screen. For the Kodai, you're going to need 1 Golpar and 1 juice. For the Elder potion, you're going to need 1 Golpar and 1 mushroom. And for the Twisted potion, you're going to need 1 Golpar and 1 Sicily. You can make these with 75 herb lore, and it's perfectly fine too. It's just recommended to have 90 plus so you can make the plus version. If you don't have 78 herb lore, most people that you will raid with do have it, so it's not really something you should worry about, but it's something that you should definitely invest in. If you're paranoid, make around 10 extra brews, but you're going to need 10 extra juice then as well. While someone is making the last few potions, one player should take out 3 brews, 3 revitalizations, and put them on the floor right next to the hole that leads to Olm. This is just so that when you overload, you can get down the hole really quickly. This isn't necessary, you can do this at the chest. I usually do it at the chest, but if someone's just standing around while someone's making potions, then it's just a good idea to make piles in front of the hole. Olm is the hardest part to learn due to the variety of his attacks he uses during his fight. In a raid with 3 or more people, there are 3 roles that you want to determine before going into the Olm room. Also, before you go in, I recommend you set these tile markers so you can focus on where you're supposed to be standing. These depend on the role, and it's because Olm turns his head depending on where players are standing within the room. You want to make sure everyone is in the right area, or else Olm will keep his head in the middle and attack multiple players at a time. When done correctly, only one person should ever be hit by an Olm attack each time. The roles are Headrunner, Mage, and Meleeer. I'll quickly break down each one. The Mage is going to stand on this side of the room and attack the Mage hand. Once the Mage hand dies, they switch to melee gear and start attacking the melee hand. This is the easiest role when learning since you don't have to focus on anything except switching prayers and avoiding specials. The Headrunner is going to stand in the middle of the room and run the head between both areas. Olm's head is going to turn to whichever side has more players. For this role, you want to have all of your mage gear on and attack the mage hand the same as if you were maging. But this time you're going to be running between both tile markers, turning the head left and right. It sounds harder than it actually is because Headrunner is the role that takes the least amount of damage. They worry less about regular attacks and from the special attacks because they usually only hit the people on mage and melee hand. Headrunner is usually the one that brings in Water Strike casts because they can get either side of the room when the Flame Wall attack hits. For learning purposes though, I recommend all 3 players keep Water Strike casts so each can focus on their own roles. This is going to sacrifice 1 brew spot, but you won't get hit like a 60 from a Flame Wall attack and you're guaranteed to get out of it. Onto the Meleeer role. The Meleeer has the most variability. If you are a Meleeer, you want to attack the melee hand until it cripples, and then switch your focus over to the mage hand. You have to be on long range with your Trident or Sanguinesti Staff for it to hit the mage hand and for you to stay in your area. Once the melee hand uncripples, you want to go back to melee gear and attack it again. You won't kill the melee hand as quick as the mage hand because 3 people are going to be attacking the mage hand at the same time, but once the mage hand dies, everyone switches their focus to the melee hand after. Make sure to stay 1 tile apart from each other and attack the melee hand until it dies. This is done so that if Olm does his burn with me attack, you won't hit all 3 players just by standing in one spot. Now repeat the same rules until you go into the 3rd phase. I'll explain Olm's phases after going over his attacks and how to avoid taking as much damage as possible. I'll order Olm's attacks from most damaging to least damaging. This is the order to make sure you focus the most on so you don't die by taking a big hit or getting comboed out. The first thing you want to focus on is when crystals appear. It's extremely easy to get caught off guard by this when learning because you're trying to switch prayers for his regular attacks. Crystals have a specific time when they activate, and it's going to be right after the teleports attack. The real cycle is crystals, then lightning, then portals, and then back to crystals again. But you should really just focus on, I know teleports just happened, so I have to be ready for crystals coming up under my feet. You're pretty much just going to want to focus on portals, then crystals, because if you focus on just that, you'll know every time that they appear, and you'll avoid taking like a 40 to the face every single time. To avoid them, all you have to do is just walk one space away or more. The second thing to focus on is regular attacks. Make sure you have the right overhead prayer up, because if you don't, then he's going to hit you pretty regularly. It's really easy to determine between the two. This is what a range attack looks like, and this is what a mage attack looks like. Pray against these as much as possible. It's really easy to see what attack style he's using, because you can look at the other rolls and see what he's attacking them with, and then pray against it. The next attack is the orb special attacks. These orbs are going to hit you for half your current HP and half of your current prayer if you have a prayer up. It's also going to take down whatever prayer that you had up. Make sure to pray correctly against them. A good strategy is to look at the color of the message in your chat box. Red is melee, blue is mage, and green is range. These attacks are common, so just watch out for when your prayer goes off and when a colored chat message pops up. The last thing you should focus all your attention on is teleports. This isn't going to cause as much damage as the others, but it makes people panic. When teleports happen, the general rule is to run both paired players over to thumb, which is marked by the black tile on this image. After you go to thumb and after the attack is over, you go back to your roll and you do everything normal again. Also, just in case it's confusing, it is the thumb of the melee hand. After this, there aren't really any big sources of damage. Basically, just watch out for being comboed by special attacks. If there's crystal bombs, run away from them and stay away from them. If you're covered in acid, make sure you walk it off on your side instead of running around the room. If a flame wall happens, left-click the fire closest to the player to let them out. If falling spikes happen, walk them off. When lightning pops up, avoid being on the tile that it hits. And in between phases, falling crystals are going to happen, so avoid them as best you can. For these, RuneLight's vertical camera plugin is very helpful. Do all of this until the third phase as normal. Try to keep in mind when your overload is going to go off and heal you back 50 HP. On the first two phases, use one Dragon Warhammer spec on the melee hand, then run to whatever roll you have. If you're melee, you can just stand there. On the third phase, all three players want to use 2 Dragon Warhammer specs on the melee hand. You'll know when you're on the third phase when his head starts glowing green, or if you just simply counted the number of phases you've already done. This is the final part of the fight. On the third phase, you're going to have to kill both hands around the same time. Like I said, start by using your 2 Dragon Warhammer specs per person, and then all of you want to stand and stay at the melee hand until teleports happen. Once teleports happen, have every single player stand at thumb. I'm going to put this part in slow motion. What you're trying to do here is skip Olm's healing phase. Immediately after teleports, run to the opposite side of the room where the mage hand is and stay behind that tile marker. Olm's going to turn his head towards the mage hand, and healing is going to be skipped for the meleeer. This is so they can kill their hand faster. After you do it once, don't worry about doing it again because you'll already be able to do enough damage as the meleeer. The hand does not cripple during this phase, so watch out and don't kill the hand. The Major and the Runner are going to want to get the Mage Hand as low as possible without killing it as well. I recommend getting it to around 5 to 10%, because if you try to get it any lower, usually it ends up killing the hand. I've had so many raids where the Mage Hand has been killed because we're just focusing on it too much, or just forgetting that it's third phase. Once it's low enough and it has like 1/10 of its health left, go to the melee hand and all players are going to attack it until it dies. It starts healing directly after portals, and stops healing directly after crystals. Make sure you don't attack it during this time period, because if you attack it, it's going to heal for the damage that you would have hit. After you get it low enough, kill the melee hand and then focus every player on the mage hand. Then every single player will switch into their range gear. If you need to tank a couple of hits at this part, it's okay, because there's going to be a lot of stuff going on at once. Make sure you stay on your side of the room at this part. It can be hard to use a blowpipe here because you commonly get pulled into the middle of the room. Just make sure to avoid the falling crystals by moving vertically away from Olm. Focus more on avoiding crystals and staying in the correct area than on attacking Olm. Here he also has the ability to shoot out healing pools that you must stand on to avoid him healing a fraction of HP. It's not too much if at least one player stands on it, so if you're too far away, focus more on avoiding damage. If you're close to one, stand on it. Multiple players can stand on one pool to negate the healing. Now, if you die, you're going to lose 40% of your own personal points. This goes for every single player, so just make sure not to go back in if you have almost no points. When I first started, I would die 1 to 2 times on Olm every single time until like 5 trio KC. Don't get discouraged because the GP per hour here is really good and it's actually fun and less like a grind when you get the hang of it. If you have any questions, definitely comment down below and I'll do my best to reply. Leave a like if this was helpful and let me know if you'd like to see an in-depth guide or solo guide. So good luck, I hope you get a lot of Twisted Bow and Dex drops.